most great founders have a very clear spike. They are not great at everything, but they're really great at something, and then they leverage that. So that's number one. Number two is they have a ton of drive. And drive is very different, I think, from passion. I think passion is important. It's great with passionate people, but we all know a lot of passionate people who never get anything done. So passion in itself is not enough. Drive is more, yes, you're passionate, but you also have that combined with raw ambition and the ability to execute. So can you see that people have moved things forward in the past, achieved different things, hit milestones, and are they really ambitious about solving an important problem and doing something really big? So that's number two. Number three is grit. Right? Great founders never give up. Right? They just keep on hammering.
Absolutely. We're not looking to use AI to replace lawyers. I mean, lots of fun and games in the press about that, right? New technology like this comes out, and our knee-jerk reaction is to go full force and just, replace all lawyers. No, it's not going to work. But there's a whole bunch of high volume, low value, repetitive work that lawyers do every single day of the week.
We had a really deep conversation one day and say, well, what do we do if one day, let's say social media dropped off the face of the earth? Like, how do we remain a real legacy business and continue to have the impact that we have? And I mentioned it before, it's one of the things that still to this day, it doesn't matter what time or when we read them, when we see the impact that our work has had for a person, I get the same butterflies in the stomach and the same feeling of like, this is the reason why. Well, this is our purpose, and I feel as though a lot of my purpose to be able to do this.
And, the COVID hit. And
yes.
Yeah, I don't think it will happen. Like one day when there's a digital human who could be very lifelike, very intelligent conversations, and they could be agentic. The digital human interface that we're building could enable a lot of automations in just one screen, right?
Welcome to the AI Edge podcast, where we talk with founders and leaders from across Asia's startup landscape who are pioneering the next wave of success. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tony Spelde, the CTO for the Asia Digital Natives team at Microsoft, and I am really looking forward to this conversation. We have Beau Bertoli. He's a co-founder and chief revenue officer at Prospa. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Tony. Thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure. So, Beau, Prospa is a 13-year-old company. I know my teenagers at home have a lot more angst than you seem to have right now, so you're doing something right. Tell us the origin story of Prospa.
Yeah, sure. Well, Prospa, as you mentioned, is a 13-year-old business. So it was started by myself and one of the founder, Greg Michelle, back in 2011, 2012. And we were career entrepreneurs. We'd always had our own small businesses. I think we had 5 companies between us. And we'd always faced that challenge of, I've got a great idea in my business, but I need the money to bring that idea to life, and not having access to that capital. So we decided to stop complaining about that lack of access from the traditional banks and try to do something about it. And hence the idea behind Prospa was born. We're now 13 years in. We've lent out over $5 billion across the Australian and New Zealand economy to almost 100,000 small businesses. And it's really powerful to actually be a part of so many of their journeys, knowing firsthand the impact that having access to capital can do for your business. We were obviously a business that was born in the cloud. So as a technology first business, that was a really important differentiator for us as we were thinking about how do we reach these millions of small businesses across the markets we want to play. And there was only one way to do that, which was to invest very early on in technology and making sure that product and our service differentiation was going to be very much tech enabled and tech led.
The scar tissue of being a founder prior to Prospa, it's surely influenced your journey. How would you say it altered the course of Prospa?
Yeah, it does. I think every founder has got those war stories from a previous life, and even from the businesses that we're now running. It certainly does shape the learnings, and I think as a founder, there's a lot of things that you know and that you've learnt from running different businesses, but there's also massive gaps in your knowledge and your awareness, and that's where I think for myself and Greg, we were very fortunate that early in our journey, we found some great investors who could provide a lot of insight and intelligence on how to run businesses like ours. We're joined by some really wonderful people very early on, and all the way through 13 years later, to this day, we've got an incredible team who show up every day to try and help us realize our vision. Our vision at Prospa is to unleash the potential of every small business. And it's something that's been really, I think, powerful and potent to us that we can anchor ourselves in when we have those difficult moments and those trialing stages of the business. We can also sit back and think, okay, well, what can we do today, this week, this month that moves us forward towards that vision? So it is something that's, we think a lot about in terms of how we structure our business, how we operate Prospa. And at the end of the day, we exist for our small business customer to try and make their lives just that little bit better in terms of running their business.
That's great. I want to come back to the customer obsession and the culture thing in just a second. But nowadays, when people think about growing a business, it's very common to think about raising equity. And you've created a pathway that's different than that. Can you talk a little bit about why might a startup founder trade off between equity or debt? And is that a viable path?
The one thing I'd say about debt is that debt is very good in business. And if you look at even the largest institutions around the world, Microsoft as an example, and other really major companies, whether they're technology companies or more traditional companies, you'll find debt is a very important part of their balance sheet. And it can be a very good way to actually enable better returns on capital and better shareholder returns over a long period of time. It's something that the big end of town has always had access to, but the little guy, the little small business, has never had access to capital, certainly not in the Australian and New Zealand markets. So it's something that we are big believers in. We think that debt capital can make a material difference to business owners' lives. And equity is not easy to raise. Equity can be a very hard slog. You can meet many different equity investors and get lots of no's. When we look at our business owner who's borrowing $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, those are actually very small equity investments. It's not something that's really meaningful to venture capital. So as a result, small business owners are kind of left behind. And that's where Prospa really was born. How do we get in there and actually solve these small business owners' challenges where access to capital, if it's not number one, it's number two in terms of the problems they're trying to solve almost on a daily basis.
So if you're a 10-person company, it sounds like an invitation to try out the Prospa platform.
It really is, yeah. And we've got customers that are doing $20, $30, $50 million a year in revenue with 30, 50, 100 employees as well. And what we find is that even those more established businesses can also access debt from us in a very fast and meaningful way. And that really was our big differentiator when we launched our business. And even to this day, you can apply online with Prospa. You can connect your information in about 10 minutes and you'll get an almost live response as to whether or not we will lend you money. And that's a really powerful thing that as a business owner, I can know today or at the latest tomorrow whether or not I'm actually willing to be funded by Prospa. Just think about the power for a business owner. All of a sudden, that idea that I've got that needs that $50, $100, $200,000, I know whether or not I can do it in 24 hours. It's quite an extraordinary change of behavior. And it's something that when we came along, the traditional system could take 2 months, 3 months even, to actually give those business owners an answer. And most of the time, the answer was a no. So we had to innovate. We had to really think differently about the data we could access, how to build credit models, how to get funding markets to understand that small business owners, they're not that risky if you know how to look for a good business.
You guys were pioneers in this space, and from you and Greg 13 years ago to where you're at today with 350 employees, and you've IPO'd, you've been acquired. It's been a lot of growth for you guys, and you're no longer the small upstart. Has your ideal customer profile changed throughout that period?
It hasn't really changed. It's probably expanded is the best way I'd think about it. At our heart is still your traditional small business owner. We typically look at them with sub 20 employees doing around $200,000 to $2 million a year in revenue. That's our sort of heartland of customer. And coincidentally, 95% of businesses in Australia, which is about 2 million of them, fit that profile. Over the years, though, I mentioned we've had more established businesses actually approach Prospa for funding, and that's something that's now become a core part of our customer proposition. So our profile hasn't changed, it's just expanded, and we've actually now opened up products and solutions that service more established mid-sized businesses, and that's something that we're really proud of, that we can actually really compete quite comfortably and effectively against what would be more traditionally a banking style customer.
Awesome. It's great to see you guys grow that way. You mentioned the 24-hour turnaround. It sounds to me like there's an AI story under the hood there. Can you talk a little bit about how you're using AI to differentiate?
The 24-hour target for us was something that we were really, passionate about, which as small business owners ourselves, we knew how important it was to get a fast answer even if that answer was no, it's okay. You just need to get that answer quickly so you can go and figure out another solution. For us, our journey, I guess, in using different technologies, we started with machine learning is probably the starting point of our AI journey. For us in particular, our credit model and how we determine whether we can lend to someone or not, it's a really important part of our business. And we're dealing in very large data sets. So every credit application that comes through, even though it's online, has something like 450 different data points. There can be thousands of different transactions that we're actually trying to interpret and understand. Can this business owner service a product from Prospa? And that's something that can only be done with technology. And for us, machine learning was a really important part of those early days of building out our credit model and making that credit model more intelligent as we started to get bigger. After $5 billion of lending, 100,000 loans and lines of credits and all different products that are out there, we literally have billions of lines of information that we could be using to become more intelligent. And again, I think the advent of AI in the last couple of years has been something that really allows a lot more opportunity for companies like Prospa to prosper. So we definitely started with our AI journey in, let's call it like core productivity enablers. So how could someone get more efficient or more productive with some tasks? That could be someone in our HR people and culture team who's looking to write a job description. That's something that AI can now almost do automatically for you, all the way through to different use cases for productivity. But now we're actually looking at much more sophisticated ways that AI can be integrated into our business. There's probably three main areas that I'd highlight. The first is on our customer experience and how customers actually experience and buy our products. It's something which AI, I think, has created a lot of disruption already. And this is generation one of AI, which is really allowing customers to have much more personalized experiences and also to choose products and to be informed about products that meet their needs, almost in a way that is anticipating their needs rather than waiting for the customer to put their hand up and say, I need to buy that product. The second area is in data and analytics. And as I mentioned, we deal in very large data sets, but for us, it's really thinking about how we can use AI to turn everyone in our business into an analyst so that we don't just rely on a core team of analysts that really understand the data, but how can most people in the company with natural language be able to interrogate the data and actually look for different insights. And there are AI tools out there now which will even do that almost, again, in anticipation of what your business problems could be. And then the third area is around product development. So our software engineering and the way that we go about building our products. It's definitely an area where, again, there is so much advancement almost on a monthly basis coming out around how developers can almost go from being one engineer to 2 or 3 engineers, how QA, quality assurance, can now be done in a far more condensed way. So the speed of building something and releasing it to market is now much faster for us than it was a couple of years ago. So we're really excited about AI. We really think it's a game changer, not just for businesses like us, but also small businesses across the economy who are probably a little bit slower to adopt new technologies. And it's something that we're looking really hard at, how in our role as Prospa, having access to tens of thousands of these small businesses, can we actually help educate them and build awareness around how these new technologies can really help your business progress much faster.
Well, I want to come back to the data topic in just a second. With all of this data and the insights that you're able to provide, it gives you a great opportunity to add more value across different functions in your customers. I'd love to understand where you see kind of the growth, and you mentioned product development. Being able to deliver products faster has let you launch, for instance, cash flow management features and product lines. Can you talk a little bit about the roadmap and how AI product development is accelerating in that regard?
Absolutely. And I think one of the key things we look for in our data is patterns of behavior from customers. And a few years ago, we could see a pattern of behavior from our customers who were borrowing loans from us, so fixed term loans over a 1, 2, 3 year period, where they were coming back every 3 to 6 months looking for a top up. And at first we thought this might have been a risky behavior, but what we actually started to learn is that this was a customer who needed more access to working capital ongoing. And that led to the invention of our line of credit product, which was the first committed line of credit product of its nature in Australia. We then started to look at how customers were using that product, and we could see that they wanted to be making payments out of that line of credit product to their customers and for other different accounts payable payments. So we built a pay anyone feature into that product, and that really took off and people started using that for their daily payments. That then led us to look at building out a transaction account for a customer. So we partnered with a third party and we were able to create a Prospa transaction account for a business owner. And now we're layering more and more product development on top of that. So we're looking at how they can process bills, how they can make a third-party bill payment. In the very near future, we're going to have different payments options for business owners as well. So not just how they can send money out, but also how they can receive money in. For us, the roadmap, it's not necessarily that AI has enabled that, but it's definitely allowing us to move faster so that we can get more insight into our data. And then when it comes to product development, we can build things out far quicker and get things to market far quicker. And again, I come back to AI being, this is generation 1 of AI. Gen 2, Gen 3, which is not that far away in the years ahead, is going to really radically change the way that businesses like Prospa are able to think about their customer problems and design and build new product features. So for us, the roadmap is looking really strong, very oriented around those capital products that business owners need, the payment products they need to transact, and ultimately how we can help them with their administration of their business. We call it the cash flow app, the Prospa cash flow app. It's the all-in-one concept. And for us, we're really excited about this because in Australia and New Zealand, there isn't really any product platform that has done this for small business owners.
You have been very intentional about the culture. And again, your scars and the experience from being a small business founder and now growing to where you are today, you've continued to invest in that culture. And I think the experimentation that you've created has enabled you to achieve a lot of this growth. Could you talk a little bit about how you've scaled culture as your team size has scaled as well?
It's a really difficult thing to scale because when you're a small company of 10, 20, 30 people even, as founders or owners of the business, you're involved in every hire. So you can really craft the team that comes together because fundamentally culture comes from the behaviors of the team. And it's the behaviors, the values, the standards that team lives. That's what the culture of the organization will fundamentally become. And early on, it's very easy to control that. But as we started scaling, particularly past 50 and to 100 people, it becomes really difficult to be involved in all hiring. So we then had to get very deliberate or very intentional about what culture we wanted to curate in the business and put in place some steps or processes that would actually allow us to keep that culture strong, even in the advent where Greg and I weren't involved necessarily in all of the incoming hiring into the business. There's a few things that we were able to do with that. So the first is that we created a cultural ambassador program, and you can tell who they are. Every business has got them. They are people that just live and breathe the organization. They show up every day, and you can just tell that they are the real embodiment almost of the values that an organization has. And that program, we identified, I think we had about 50 people. We identified, I think it was 14 cultural ambassadors. And those people are involved in a cultural ambassador interview stage. And it's later on in the interview process where they are outside of the hiring management team and they have a veto over a cultural endorsement or not of the person who's the candidate coming into the business. And that's something that we've found candidates love as well, because they get to talk to someone who's not the hiring manager and ask those real questions. What's this company really like? Is it as fun and interesting? Is it as challenging and inspiring? And they get to hear it firsthand from people that are not in the team they're going to be joining. So it's a win-win in that regard. And there's been numerous occasions where even an executive has wanted to hire a candidate and they haven't passed the cultural ambassador test. So that's one example of something we've had to be very deliberate about. The second was actually defining our culture in words and getting our values really clear and making sure that they're embedded in all processes in the business. So not just the onboarding as people are joining, but also in performance ratings, in the development programs we hold, and how we actually reward and recognize performance in the business. Culture is a very, very hard thing to scale, but it can be done. And we're 13 years in, and I'd like to think that our culture has continued to grow and evolve. It's not the same as it was when we were a 10-person business. And I think if we were a 1,000-person business, it would probably evolve again. But there are true core tenets that we have to retain, and that's something we work really hard at on a daily basis almost.
Well, I commend you. During COVID, you issued relief to 5,000 or 6,000 Aussie businesses, and that level of customer obsession, you see it as an investment, which brings them back and keeps them on your platform, and it's great that your team embodies that.
Yeah, Prospa for many years in a row now has been rated as a great place to work. We've been rated as a great place to work in technology, great place to work for women. So we really do care about our team and the environment that we're creating. And to your point about customer obsession, I think that is how it plays out. You know, when times are good, it's really easy for everyone to get along and play nicely. When you hit really difficult moments, and COVID is a great example of that for our business, where we lend money to small businesses and the government told them all to shut their doors and they couldn't trade pretty much for extended periods of time. Our team didn't splinter. It actually came together. And in that example of culture in action, we could see just how tight people became, even in these extraordinary high pressure moments. So culture does matter. We invest a lot in it. And we're so fortunate to have hundreds of people in our business that really care and think about the same way that we do in terms of customer obsession.
At 13 years old, you're no longer a baby in business terms. And so you've essentially avoided getting trapped in the innovator's dilemma of being good at one thing only. The experimentation culture, your head of data and analytics has talked about this publicly as well, which the space that you've given your technical teams to explore. And that's led to, for instance, his experimentation with graph relationships in your data set and being able to identify the shadow risk that different shadow directors might add to a lending decision, for example. Now with your cash flow app and things, how do you weigh that experimentation and kind of evaluate product market fit to continue to innovate while maintaining good customer service?
Almost split them in some ways. So good customer service and customer experience comes from our core products, and we have teams who are focusing just on that and really thinking about how do we enhance that proposition, how do we make that proposition more scalable, more interesting to a customer, and ultimately more profitable in the long run or sustainable in the long run. Within that, there are opportunities to innovate. So we're always on the lookout for new ideas there. And a great example of that is a product that we launched about 6 months ago called Prospa IQ, which is Prospa Intelligent Quoting. And this is a product platform that integrates into all of our credit data platforms, our pricing modules. And what it allows is for a customer or one of our third-party introducers to put in some very basic information about their business and get a quote in 15 seconds, a real-time quote. And it's something that we will actually stand behind. It's a really innovative piece of technology, and it's embedded really in the way that our current operations works, but it's a big enhancement on that and our product development. So that's an example where we can find opportunity inside our core and we want to keep investing in it. But then we find lots of growth opportunities that are outside of our core. And this is where Greg and I have always had a healthy appetite for, you could call it innovation, I call it risk-taking, which is looking at those opportunities and saying, okay, we don't know if this is going to work, but we're prepared to go and put, might be a few $1 million of investment and build behind this idea to test it out, to see can we actually get an appetite for it. Now it's grounded in strategy, in why we actually would be building those kind of propositions as a holistic offering. We're not off doing, building automated cars or something completely irrelevant to our business.
Rockets.
Yeah, exactly. But we're sitting there and thinking about our total vision and how we need to build adjacent things that may or may not work out. And that's something, again, that we've been so fortunate to have great investors and a great attitude from our shareholders to say, that's okay. And in fact, it's encouraged to take a risk. We don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to learn something from that as well. So that culture of innovation, that culture of trying new things and not knowing if it's going to work out, I think it's a real differentiator. And I think it's something a lot of companies really struggle with, because you've got this core machine that's really good and it's making good profits. How do you actually get some resource focused on net new stuff? It's really, really hard to do. So we've been very deliberate about that over the years. I wouldn't say we've always been super successful at it. We've probably had hit misses as well over time, and that's to be expected. But it's something that we really believe in and something we're going to continue to do as a business. Yeah.
It seems like you've taken best practices from a lot of very successful, you've done pattern recognition, successful businesses around the world. Is there a company that you admire that you would call out?
Oh, lots of companies. I mean, when I think about the space that we're in. Some businesses like Stripe and Square, globally have done some phenomenal things, particularly in the SME space. When I look at customer experience, companies like Amazon, just the Everything Store is pretty powerful, and I know my wife is a prolific user of Amazon's products. That's another great example of a company that's just got a lot of things right. Not to toot your own horn, but I think Microsoft as well, especially in the last decade, has come a long way in terms of creating integrated solutions for customers. So when we think about our Cashflow app and trying to bring this all in one universe together for small business owners, we look to examples like Microsoft to see, well, how's it being done in different markets that might target a slightly bigger customer profile, but we can apply a lot of those principles down to our business. So we certainly do take inspiration from plenty of organizations out there, even companies that have nothing to do with small business, companies like Canva. They've got a phenomenal way of engaging from a culture perspective and a mission. There's a lot that we can learn from many businesses. And I think that's important for founders to always be out there looking for those new ideas, which might not actually come from your own shop.
Well, thank you for sharing today. I think there's a lot that you offer to small businesses across Australia and New Zealand, and as an amazing place to work. It's great to get a glimpse behind the curtain. For folks who would like to know more, what would you say? Prospa.com?
Yeah, Prospa.com. So it's prospa.com. Jump online. You can read all about us. It's so easy just to get started. If you're a small business owner and you're not sure about whether you're eligible for these types of products, you can jump on our website and apply online from the comfort of your own home or own business. So really easy to get started with us. And we've got a whole suite of products in the roadmap that I think are going to be compelling to a lot of different business owners. So watch this space.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time today, Beau.
Pleasure. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks for tuning in to the AI Edge podcast by Microsoft. If this episode sparked any ideas or things that you'd like to know more about, please like, follow, share, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you.